The sky turned red on a Tuesday, not the gentle red of sunset, but an angry, burning red that made people stop and look up. Major Han was drinking his morning tea on the porch of his small country house when it happened. At 80 years old, Han had seen many strange things in his life. He had fought in wars, led men into battle, and earned medals that now sat in an old wooden box under his bed. But he had never seen the sky burn like this. "Grandfather, come inside quickly." His grandson June ran out onto the porch, his face pale with fear. The young man grabbed Han's arm, nearly spilling the old soldier's tea. "What is all the fuss about?" Han asked calmly, setting down his cup. "It's on every channel. Alien ships. They're attacking major cities across the world." Han followed his grandson inside. On the television screen, shaky footage showed massive ships hovering over Seoul. They were dark and pointed, like giant metal insects. Beams of light shot down from them, turning buildings to dust. "The president has ordered all military forces to respond," said the frightened news reporter. "But our weapons seem to have little effect on the alien vessels." Han watched without speaking. His old soldier's eyes saw what others might miss. The aliens were not just attacking randomly. They were taking out communication centers, power plants, and military bases first. This was a well-planned invasion. 3 days later, most of Earth's defenses had fallen. The aliens, who called themselves the Dracs, sent messages to all working screens. Their leader appeared to be a tall, insect-like creature with multiple eyes and a hard shell. "People of Earth," the creature said in a strangely perfect human voice, "your planet now belongs to the Drax Empire. Resistance is pointless. Your military forces have been destroyed. Within 3 months, we will complete our control of your world." Han sat in his living room, watching with June, who had just returned from his military base. The young captain looked beaten, his uniform dirty and torn. "They destroyed our base in minutes," June said, his voice hollow. "Our best weapons didn't even scratch their ships." Han nodded but said nothing. He was thinking about the way the Drax ships moved, the patterns of their attacks. There was something familiar about it all, something that reminded him of battles long ago. A knock at the door startled them both. June answered it to find a military jeep waiting outside with 2 soldiers. "Captain June," said the soldier, "General Kim requests your presence immediately. We are gathering all available military personnel." The soldier glanced at Han. "The general specifically asked for your grandfather as well." "Me?" Han raised an eyebrow. "What use does the army have for an old man like me?" "Sir, the general said to tell you that we need your mind, not your knees." The soldier handed Han an envelope with official military seals. Inside was a short note in General Kim's handwriting. "Han, the youngsters don't know how to fight this kind of war. We need the old tigers now." Han read the note twice, then slowly stood up. He walked to his bedroom and pulled the old wooden box from under his bed. Inside were his medals, his old uniform patches, and a small notebook filled with battle strategies he had collected over 60 years of military service. "June," he called to his grandson, "help me pack a bag." "Grandfather, you can't be serious," June protested. "You're 80 years old." Han tucked the notebook into his pocket and looked his grandson in the eye. "The Dracs think they have beaten us because they have better weapons. But there is more to winning a war than having the biggest gun." As the military jeep carried them away from the small country house, Han watched the red sky and thought about all the battles he had fought, all the strategies he had learned. The Dracs might have technology beyond human understanding, but Han knew something they didn't. Earth's old soldiers had fought against impossible odds before, and they knew how to win. The military jeep drove for hours, taking back roads to avoid Drax patrols. Han watched the countryside pass by, noting the burned fields and destroyed buildings. The aliens were not just targeting cities. "Where are we going?" Han asked the driver. "Mountain base, sir. One of the few places the Dracs haven't found yet." As they approached a steep mountain, the road suddenly disappeared into what looked like solid rock. The driver pressed a hidden button, and the rock face slid open to reveal a tunnel. Inside the mountain was a busy military base. Men and women in uniforms rushed around, carrying equipment and papers. But something was strange about many of the people Han saw. They were old, many as old as him or even older. June noticed too. "Grandfather, look at all these elderly officers. What is this place?" A tall woman with silver hair and a general's stars approached them. "Major Han, Captain June, welcome to Operation Wisdom. I'm General Kim." Han saluted out of old habit. "General, I didn't know you were still in service." "I wasn't until 3 days ago," she said with a grim smile. "None of us were." She led them into a large room where about 50 elderly men and women sat around tables covered with maps and computers. Most wore parts of old uniforms, some from wars fought decades ago. "Let me introduce you to our special command," General Kim said. "Colonel Sung, 82 years old, our artillery expert." A thin man with thick glasses nodded from where he was marking a map. "Dr. Yuma, 78, former combat medic and tactical advisor." A small woman with short white hair looked up from a computer and gave a quick wave. "And Commander Park, 84, our naval strategy expert." A man with a weather-beaten face and bushy eyebrows grunted from his seat. "Everyone," General Kim announced, "this is Major Han, the strategic mind behind the River Valley Campaign of '65. Several of the older officers looked up with new interest. The River Valley Campaign was famous. Han had led a small force to victory against an enemy 5 times their size. A young lieutenant standing nearby whispered to another officer, "Why are we bringing in nursing home residents to fight aliens?" Han pretended not to hear, but General Kim turned sharply. "Lieutenant, do you know why the Dracs are winning?" she asked. The young man straightened. "Because their technology is far superior to ours, Mom." "Exactly. We can't match their weapons," Kim said. "But there's one thing they don't have: experience fighting against superior forces." She walked to a large screen showing Dracs battle formations. The Dracs have conquered many planets, but all were young civilizations with limited military history. They've never faced an enemy with thousands of years of warfare experience. Han nodded, understanding now why he was here. They rely on their technology and follow the same tactics every time. "Yes," said Dr. Yuna, joining the conversation. "We've analyzed their attack patterns. They're predictable. They've never needed to adapt because they've always been the strongest." Colonel Sung removed his glasses. "But humans? We've been fighting wars where the weak defeat the strong for our entire history." Commander Park spoke up, his voice rough with age. "The Dracs think old soldiers like us are useless. They expect young, strong fighters. But war isn't won by who runs fastest. It's won by who thinks furthest ahead." Han finished, remembering the old military saying. General Kim smiled. "Exactly, Major Han. That's why we've gathered the best strategic minds from the last 4 wars. People who know how to win when outgunned and outnumbered." She turned to the room full of elderly veterans. "Ladies and gentlemen, we may be old, but our minds are sharp. We carry within us the collective knowledge of human military history." Han felt something he hadn't felt in years, the fire of purpose. He looked at the worried face of his grandson June and the skeptical young lieutenant. "The Dracs think humanity is finished," Han said, his voice stronger than it had been in years. "But they've never met Earth's old soldiers." Around the room, the aged veterans nodded, determination in their eyes. They might be old, but they were far from finished. The real fight was just beginning. The next morning, Han woke early in his small room at the mountain base. His old bones ached, but his mind felt sharp. He found the mess hall and poured himself a cup of strong coffee. Colonel Sung joined him at a table covered with papers. "Did you sleep, Han?" "Not much," Han admitted. I was thinking about the Dracs. Sung nodded. Dr. Yuma has new information. Meeting in 10 minutes. The briefing room was packed when they arrived. Veterans sat in the front rows, while younger officers stood at the back. Dr. Yuna stood beside a large screen, her white hair neatly pinned back. We've analyzed the Dracs' attack patterns from 20 different battles, she began, and we found something interesting. She showed video clips of Drac ships in formation. They always attack the same way. First wave hits communication. Second wave targets military. Third wave destroys government buildings. They never change their plan, Han said, seeing the pattern. Exactly. Dr. Yuna smiled. They're like a machine that can only run one program. General Kim stood up. The Dracs operate with a hive mind. They think as one. This makes them very powerful, but not very creative. Han studied the Dracs' formations. They reminded him of something from long ago. He opened his old notebook and flipped through the yellowed pages. This looks like the Roman testudo formation, he said, pointing to the screen. The Drac ships form a protective shell, just like Roman soldiers with their shields. Commander Park leaned forward, his bushy eyebrows raised. And if it's like a testudo, it has the same weaknesses. Strong from the front, vulnerable from below. The room grew quiet as the veterans began to see what Han was showing them. Colonel Sung stood up slowly. The Dracs have conquered dozens of planets, but all were young civilizations with limited military history. But Earth. Han looked around the room. We have thousands of years of warfare. From ancient Korea to modern times, we've developed countless strategies. Dr. Yuna pressed a button, and the screen showed a timeline of Earth's military history. The Dracs have only one way to fight. We have thousands. General Kim nodded. That's why we need you veterans. Each of you knows strategies from different times and places. Together, we have a tactical library the Dracs have never seen. The younger officers in the back of the room looked at each other. One raised his hand. With respect, ma'am, said the lieutenant from yesterday. Knowing old strategies is fine, but these veterans can barely walk. How can they fight? Han watched the young man's face. He wasn't being disrespectful, just practical. Commander Park stood up, leaning on his cane. Young man, war isn't won by who runs fastest, but by who thinks furthest ahead. Han pushed his coffee cup aside and spread out a blank paper. Let me show you something. He began to draw. First, he sketched a Drac ship formation. Then, below it, he drew a simple battle plan. This is from Admiral Lee's victory at Myeongnang Strait in 1597, Han explained. He defeated 133 Japanese ships with just 13 of his own by using the narrow strait and strong currents. Han drew more diagrams. And this is from the mountain battles of General Kwan in the 1600s. He used terrain to defeat a larger enemy force. The room grew quiet as Han continued drawing, showing how ancient strategies could be adapted for modern warfare against the Dracs. Dr. Yuna nodded. We're creating a playbook of humanity's most successful tactics against superior forces. The skeptical lieutenant stepped closer to see Han's drawings. These are all hit-and-run tactics. Guerrilla warfare. Yes, Han said. The Dracs expect us to fight like them. Direct and overwhelming force. But we will fight like humans have always fought when outnumbered. We will be unpredictable. General Kim looked at the room full of veterans and young soldiers. The Dracs think they know war, but they've never faced human warriors with 5,000 years of battle wisdom. For the first time since the invasion, Han saw hope on the faces around him. The Dracs had better weapons, but humans had something more valuable. Knowledge earned through centuries of survival. 3 days later, Han stood with General Kim and Colonel Sung in the command room. A large map showed a Dracs command post in a valley 30 miles away. This will be our first test, General Kim said. If we can destroy this post, we prove our strategy works. Young officers in the room studied the map with doubtful faces. The Drax post had heavy weapons and force fields. A frontal attack would be suicide. "What's your plan, Major Han?" asked Captain June, who had been assigned to his grandfather's team. Han pointed to the narrow valley leading to the Drax post. "We won't attack head-on. That's what they expect." He traced a path on the map with his finger. "Instead, we use Admiral Lee's naval strategy from 1597, but on land." Colonel Sung nodded, understanding immediately. "Draw them into a trap." For the next hour, Han explained his plan. The young officers looked less doubtful as they began to see how it might work. At dawn the next day, 3 small teams took their positions. Han watched from a hillside overlooking the valley. His old eyes needed binoculars now, but they still caught every detail. The first team, led by Captain June, drove 3 trucks into the valley, making lots of noise. The Drax sensors detected them immediately. Just as Han predicted, a squadron of Drax fighters flew out to investigate. "Now, Dr. Yuna," Han said into his radio. On the hillsides above the valley, Dr. Yuna's team triggered explosives they had placed during the night, not to hit the Drax, but to start an avalanche. Tons of rock and dirt poured down into the narrow valley, trapping half the Drax squadron. The confused aliens tried to regroup. Exactly as Han had hoped, they formed their standard defensive pattern, the one that resembled the Roman testudo formation. "Colonel Sung, your turn," Han said. From carefully hidden positions, Colonel Sung's artillery team opened fire. They didn't aim for the Drax ships directly. Instead, they targeted the specific points Han had identified as communication nodes. The old artillery expert had placed his guns using principles from 16th century mountain warfare. The Drax scanners hadn't detected them because they weren't where any modern military would put artillery. 3 precise shots hit the Drax communication nodes. Without central control, the alien ships began to move erratically. "All teams, withdraw now," Han ordered. Following the hit-and-run doctrine Han had perfected decades ago, all human forces pulled back before the Drax could mount a counterattack. They left behind only empty positions. By the time the main Drax force arrived from their command post, the humans were gone. The aliens found only their damaged ships and destroyed communication nodes. Back at the mountain base, the teams celebrated their first victory. Not a single human had been lost, and they had dealt a significant blow to the Drax. "The aliens will adapt," Han warned. "We can't use the same strategy twice." General Kim nodded. "That's why we have veterans from different wars. Each knows different tactics." Han watched his grandson June talking excitedly with other young officers. The doubt was gone from their faces. They had seen that the old strategies could work against alien technology. Commander Park joined Han, leaning on his cane. "The Drax are confused now. They expected us to fight conventionally." "Yes," Han agreed. "They don't understand what's happening. Their sensors look for things they recognize. Large forces, standard formations, modern weapons. But we're using tactics from 1,000 years ago," Park said with a smile. "Fighting in ways their computers don't recognize." Dr. Yuna came into the room, looking tired but pleased. "Our scouts report the Drax have abandoned the command post. They're pulling back to reassess." For the first time since the invasion began, humans had won a clear victory. The Drax had lost a completed outpost. Han knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would send more forces, try new approaches. But now they faced something they had never encountered before. An enemy that refused to fight according to predictable patterns. And the old veterans had only just begun to open their playbook of strategies developed across 5,000 years of human warfare. 2 weeks after their first victory, Han sat in a new command center. The mountain base had grown. More veterans had arrived from around the country. Each brought knowledge of different battle tactics. The wall screens showed maps of Drax positions around the world. Small blue dots marked human victories. There were now 23 blue dots. Not many against the hundreds of red Drax strongholds, but a start. "Major Han, The international call is ready, a young communications officer said. Han nodded and moved to a large screen. Faces appeared, old faces from different countries. A French general with a white mustache, a Brazilian admiral with dark skin and silver hair, a Chinese colonel with thin glasses, all veterans, all over 70 years old. The strategy from the Battle of Myeonyang worked in Thailand, reported the Chinese colonel. We sank 5 Drax ships using the narrow river and tidal currents. In Brazil, we used the rainforest tactics from the Paraguayan War, said the Brazilian admiral. The Drax cannot see through the thick trees. We destroyed 3 supply depots. Han nodded. The Drax are starting to move their elite forces to these trouble spots. They still don't understand what's happening. The French general smiled. They think these are random attacks. They don't see the pattern. Because we're not using just one pattern, Han said. We're using 1,000 different patterns from 1,000 different wars. After the call ended, Han found Captain June sitting at a computer. His grandson was typing quickly, creating a document. What are you working on? Han asked. A manual for the younger soldiers, Jun said. I'm recording all the strategies the veterans are using, so we can learn. Han looked over his shoulder. The screen showed detailed notes about tactics from wars fought long before June was born. You young ones are catching on fast, Han said with pride. We have to, Jun replied. You veterans know all these strategies, but we need to learn them quickly. Across the room, Dr. Yuma and Commander Park were arguing over a map. Han joined them. We should adapt Admiral Yi's turtle ship design, Dr. Yuna was saying. It could work against Drax landing craft. The currents are wrong, Commander Park insisted. We need to use the island-hopping strategy instead. Han listened to their debate. 2 80-year-old veterans arguing about how to adapt 16th-century naval tactics to fight space aliens. It would have been funny if the fate of Earth didn't depend on it. The door opened, and General Kim entered with a serious face. The Drax have noticed our pattern, she announced. They're deploying their elite forces against our teams. Han wasn't surprised. They're adapting. But they're still thinking like Drax, not like humans. What do you mean? Asked a young lieutenant. Han walked to the main map. Look at how they're responding. They're sending overwhelming force to our last attack points. They think we'll attack the same places again. But we won't, Jun said, understanding. No. Each time we use a different strategy, a different location. Han pointed to the map. They're playing chess, thinking only a few moves ahead. We're playing 1,000 games at once. General Kim nodded. The Drax commander has sent a message. It says our primitive tactics will fail against their elite forces. The room grew quiet. The aliens were taking the human resistance seriously now. Good, Han said finally. Their pride makes them predictable. He turned to the younger officers. Now we use their adaptation against them. While their elite forces chase our decoys, we hit their supply lines. Dr. Yuna smiled. Like General Washington crossing the Delaware. Exactly, Han agreed. Attack when and where they least expect it. For the next hour, Han outlined a global strategy. Teams of veterans would coordinate attacks across continents. Each would use tactics from different historical periods, different cultures. The Drax might have superior technology, but humans had something more valuable. 5,000 years of learning how to defeat stronger enemies. As the meeting ended, Han watched his grandson updating his manual with the new strategies. The knowledge was passing from one generation to the next. Even if the veterans couldn't win this war themselves, they were teaching the younger soldiers how to think, how to adapt. And that might be humanity's greatest weapon of all. 6 weeks had passed since the invasion began. The Drax had said they would conquer Earth in 3 months, but now, for the first time, they were failing to meet their own schedule. Han stood in the main command room, looking at the global map. Blue dots of human victories now numbered in the hundreds. The red Drax strongholds were still more numerous, but they were isolated, cut off from each other. It's working. General Kim said, joining Han at the map. The supply chain strategy is breaking them apart. Han nodded. Instead of attacking Drax strongholds directly, human forces had targeted their supply routes. The plan had come from studying ancient siege warfare. Don't attack the castle. Cut off its food and water. Colonel Sung's team is ready, a communications officer reported. Operation Mountain Echo starts in 30 minutes. Han checked his watch. Teams around the world would attack at exactly the same time. The timing was critical. From a mountain hideout 50 miles away, Colonel Sung was directing the largest coordinated action yet. The old artillery expert had a unique system for this mission, one the Drax couldn't detect. Sung is using smoke signals and drum patterns, Han explained to June. Communication methods from ancient Korea. Smoke signals. June looked surprised. That's so primitive. Exactly, Han said. The Drax monitor all electronic signals. They can't imagine we would use something as simple as smoke and drums. At exactly noon, human forces around the world struck. They didn't attack Drax ships or bases. Instead, they targeted fuel depots, landing zones, and communication relays. Every team used different tactics, but all struck at the same time. In the command center, reports began coming in from around the world. Brazil team successful. Kenya team reports mission complete. Japan team has destroyed target. Han watched as blue lights appeared across the map. The Drax were caught completely by surprise. Their forces were spread too thin, chasing what they thought were the main human resistance groups. On the main screen, satellite images showed Drax ships flying in confusion. Without central coordination, their formations broke down. They began to gather their forces, pulling back to defend their main command ship. They're doing exactly what we wanted, Han said with satisfaction. They're clustering their forces. General Kim looked concerned. That command ship has enough firepower to destroy any human force that approaches it. We won't approach it directly, Han said. No frontal attack. He pointed to the map showing the Drax command ship surrounded by his protective fleet. They think they're safe now, gathered together. But they've just put all their eggs in one basket. Han turned to the communications officer. Signal Commander Park. Tell him it's time for the second phase. Across the world, Commander Park received the message in his coastal base. The old naval tactician had spent weeks preparing for this moment. He gave orders to his team, who launched specially modified drones. These weren't attack drones. They carried no weapons. Instead, they broadcast false radar signals, creating ghost images of a massive human fleet approaching the Drax command ship. The alien commander, already confused by the simultaneous attacks on its supply chain, fell into Han's trap. It ordered its protective fleet to spread out to intercept the non-existent human attackers. They've taken the bait, Park reported via a secure line. Their formation is breaking. The Drax command ship was now exposed, exactly as Han had planned. He was using a strategy developed by a general who lived 3,000 years earlier. A masterful envelopment tactic that had been practiced countless times across human history. As the alien fleet scattered to chase phantom attackers, a small, stealthy human team approached the command ship from below. They were led by Captain June, who had volunteered for this dangerous mission. The team attached special devices to the command ship's hull, devices designed by Dr. Yuna based on what they had learned about Drax technology. Not bombs, but signal disruptors. When activated, the disruptors paralyzed the ship's systems. For the first time in the war, humans had captured a Drax command ship intact, with all its technological systems available to study. It was the breaking point of the war, the first major Drax defeat in their 1,000-year history of conquest. The capture of the Drax command ship changed everything. Scientists worked day and night to understand the alien technology. For the first time, humans could see how Drax weapons and shields worked. But Major Han was not at the lab with the others. He sat alone in his small room, looking at an old photo of his family. His hand shook slightly as he placed the picture back on the table. A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," Han said. Dr. Yuma entered, carrying her medical bag. Her face was serious as she sat beside him. "How bad is it?" Han asked. Dr. Yuna took out a small device and checked his vital signs. "Your heart is working too hard, old friend. The stress of the past weeks has taken a toll." Han nodded. He had felt it. The growing tiredness, the pain in his chest. At 80 years old, his body had limits that his mind did not. "How long do I have?" he asked directly. Dr. Yuna put away her equipment. "A few weeks, maybe less if you keep pushing yourself like this." Han was silent for a moment. Then he stood up slowly. "Then we have no time to waste." "You should rest," Dr. Yuna protested. "I will rest when Earth is safe," Han replied. "Until then, there is too much knowledge that must be passed on." That evening, Han called his grandson to his room. Captain June arrived, still excited from the successful mission to capture the Drax ship. "Grandfather, you should have seen it. Their technology is amazing. We're already finding ways to." June stopped when he saw Han's tired face. "What's wrong?" Han gestured to a chair. "Sit with me, June. We need to talk." For the next 2 hours, Han shared not just tactics but the deeper principles of strategic thinking. He explained how to analyze enemy patterns, how to think 5 steps ahead, how to turn a stronger enemy's power against them. "The best victory," he told June, "is the one where your enemy doesn't realize they've been defeated until it's already happened." June listened carefully, taking notes. Gradually, he understood this was not just a lesson. It was a goodbye. "Grandfather, you're not giving up, are you?" he asked, his voice breaking. Han shook his head. "No, I'm ensuring that what I know continues after me. An old soldier's final duty is to prepare the next generation." Across the base, other veterans were doing the same thing. Colonel Sung was training young artillery officers in techniques developed across centuries of warfare. Commander Park was showing naval teams how to read patterns in enemy movements. Dr. Yuma had established medical protocols based on battlefield medicine from wars fought with limited supplies. These techniques were saving lives when modern equipment wasn't available. The knowledge transfer became a formal program. General Kim called it Operation Legacy. Young officers were paired with veterans from all military backgrounds. Each day, the old soldiers shared wisdom gained through decades of service. Han created a special classroom where he taught strategic thinking to 20 young officers, including June. Though his body grew weaker, his mind remained sharp. He used simple games to teach complex concepts. In chess, he explained one day, "You don't win by taking the most pieces. You win by controlling the board." A young lieutenant asked, "But what if your opponent has better pieces?" "Then you change the rules of the game," Han replied with a smile. "That's what we're doing with the Drax. They want to play one game. We're making them play 100 different games at once." At night, when pain kept him awake, Han wrote in his tactical journal. He recorded everything he had learned in his long career. The book grew thicker each day. June found him asleep at his desk one morning, the journal open beside him. As he helped his grandfather to bed, Han held his arm tightly. "Promise me you will share what you learn," the old soldier whispered. "I promise," June said. "Your knowledge won't be lost." Han nodded and closed his eyes. The torch was being passed. Even if he didn't live to see the end of the war, his strategies would continue in the minds of the young officers he had taught. And that, he thought as he drifted to sleep, might be his greatest victory of all. 2 months after the invasion began, Earth had won many battles. But the war was far from over. The Drax were angry. They had never been defeated before. Han sat in his wheelchair in the command center. He was much weaker now, but his mind remained sharp. Dr. Yuna checked his heart monitor and frowned. "You should be resting," she whispered. Han shook his head. "Not yet. Something is coming." General Kim stood at the front of the room, her face grave. "Our satellites have detected a new Drax ship entering Earth's orbit. It's massive, unlike anything we've seen before. The screen showed a dark, star-shaped vessel larger than all other Drax ships combined. A young science officer explained, "Based on our analysis of Drax technology, we believe this is a planet-killer weapon. It can destroy Earth from orbit." The room fell silent. All their victories suddenly seemed small against this new threat. "We have no weapon that can reach it," General Kim said. "Even with the technology we captured, we can't match its power." Tension filled the room. Young officers looked at each other with fear. Even the veterans seemed at a loss. Then Han spoke, his voice quiet but clear. "We don't need to match its power." All eyes turned to him. Slowly, Han reached into his pocket and pulled out a yellowed paper map. With shaking hands, he unfolded it on the table. In 1592, he began, Admiral Yi faced a Japanese fleet of hundreds of ships. He had only 12 ships of his own. Han's fingers traced a pattern on the old map, but Yi didn't try to match Japan's power. Instead, he used the narrow strait at Myeongyang to force the enemy into a position where their numbers worked against them. Captain Jun stepped closer. "Grandfather, we can't fight a space battle. We have no ships that can reach orbit." "We don't need ships," Han said. "We need a strategy that uses all dimensions of the battlefield at once." For the next hour, Han outlined a plan unlike anything they had tried before. It combined space operations, ground forces, and electronic warfare. No single commander could have created it, but the team of veterans, each with different expertise, shaped it together. Colonel Sung would coordinate artillery teams using modified Drax technology. Commander Park would manage the timing between global forces. Dr. Yuna would use her knowledge of Drax communications to create confusion in their command structure. It was a multi-layered strategy that required perfect coordination between teams across the world. "There's one problem," General Kim said when Han finished. "Someone must lead the central coordination team. They'll be in the most exposed position, directly below the Drax planet killer." "I'll do it," Han said without hesitation. The room erupted in protest. Dr. Yuna was the loudest. "Han, you can barely walk. Your heart won't survive the stress." Han looked at his friend. "My heart is failing anyway, Yuna. You said yourself I have days, maybe a week." He turned to face the others. "This is why I'm perfect for this role. I have nothing to lose." "Grandfather." "No," Jun said, his voice breaking. "We need you." Han reached out and took his grandson's hand. "You have my knowledge now, Jun. You have my strategies. You don't need my body anymore." The room grew quiet. Even Dr. Yuna couldn't argue. Han's health was failing fast, and everyone knew it. General Kim finally nodded. "If this is your choice, Major Han, we accept it with honor." Han looked at the faces around him, the veterans he had served with for decades, the young officers who had learned from him these past weeks. He felt at peace with his decision. "I've lived 80 years, he said. "Let me choose how to spend my last day." As the teams began preparations for what might be Earth's final battle, Han opened his tactical journal one last time. On the last page, he wrote, "The measure of a life is not its length, but its purpose." Then he closed the book and gave it to Jun. "Keep this safe. Future generals will need it someday." Dawn broke over a world preparing for its last stand. The massive Drax planet killer hung in the sky like a dark star, visible even in daylight. In the central command post, Han sat in his wheelchair. Dr. Yuna checked his vital signs one last time. "Your heart is very weak," she said quietly. "This stress could kill you before the Drax get a chance." Han smiled at his old friend. "Then I'll die doing what I've done all my life, protecting my home." Around the world, teams moved into position. Colonel Sung's artillery units used modified Drax technology to aim at targets no human weapon could normally reach. Commander Park coordinated naval vessels carrying special equipment. In mountains, jungles, and deserts, human forces waited for the signal to begin. At exactly noon, Han gave the order. Operation Final Stand begins now. The first phase started with an ancient Korean method, signal fires lit on mountaintops across the world. These weren't ordinary fires. They contained minerals that created electromagnetic pulses when burned. The pulses weren't strong enough to damage the Drax ships, but they created a pattern of interference that confused alien sensors. While the Drax tried to understand these strange signals, the second phase began. Commander Park's naval teams activated devices that mimicked Drax communication patterns. The alien ships started receiving thousands of false orders from what appeared to be their own command. "They're confused," Jun reported, watching the alien ships move erratically. "Their formation is breaking." Han nodded. Now for Phase 3. Colonel Sung's teams launched modified missiles, not aimed at the Drax ships, but at specific points in the atmosphere. The missiles released clouds of reflective material that further disrupted Drax sensors. In orbit, the massive planet killer began to move. Its center opened, revealing a weapon that could destroy Earth's surface. But it couldn't fire what it couldn't see. The combination of signal fires, false communications, and atmospheric interference had effectively blinded it. The Drax commander, frustrated by the confusion, made exactly the mistake Han had predicted. It moved the planet killer lower into the atmosphere to get a clearer shot at Earth. "They've taken the bait," Han said, his voice weak but triumphant. Phase 4. This was the most dangerous part of the plan. Dr. Yuma had designed a powerful electromagnetic pulse based on their study of Drax technology. But to work, it had to be triggered directly beneath the planet killer. That's why Han was here, in the most exposed position possible. As the massive alien ship descended, it came directly over the command post, just as Han had calculated. "Now," Han whispered, pressing the trigger. The EMP device activated, sending a massive surge of energy upward. The pulse hit the planet killer at its most vulnerable point, its open weapon core. On screens around the world, humans watched as the massive alien ship faltered. Its lights flickered. The weapon core closed. Then, slowly, the great ship began to list to one side. In the command post, Han watched with satisfaction. Then a sharp pain shot through his chest. The screens around him blurred. "Grandfather!" Jun cried, rushing to his side. Han could barely speak now. He gripped Jun's hand tightly. "Is it done?" he asked. "Yes," Jun said, tears in his eyes. "The planet killer is disabled. The Drax fleet is in chaos." Han smiled. "Humanity won because we carry our history with us. Our strength isn't in our bodies, but in the wisdom we accumulate." His voice faded. Dr. Yuna moved to help, but Han shook his head. He had known this moment was coming. With his final strength, he said to Jun, "Remember what I taught you. Teach others." Then Major Han closed his eyes for the last time. 1 year later, the Drax had retreated from Earth, their first defeat in 1,000 years of conquest. At a quiet ceremony, Major Jun placed his grandfather's medal on a memorial honoring the elderly veterans who had saved humanity. The memorial stood in the valley, where Han had led the first successful mission against the aliens. Its inscription read, "Not by strength alone, but by the wisdom of years." Military academies around the world created new requirements. Alongside technology and modern warfare, all officers must now study history and the strategies of the veteran saviors. In a classroom at the new Strategic Defense Academy, Major Jun opened his grandfather's journal to teach the next generation. On the wall hung a picture of Major Han, the 80-year-old soldier who had taught humanity that its greatest weapon was not its technology, but its accumulated wisdom.